that still need them, but also to look for structures that are more efficient, structures where the government does not subsidize these services because this is a complicated situation. So we're looking as to where we can bring the future improvements. Combustible gas, we have certain challenges. Natural gas, 1.4 million inhabitants still use wood for cooking in rural homes. This is a big challenge that we have to overcome because this generates tremendous pollution and it is crucial, and we're looking for substitutes. Very viable solution is the topic of natural gas or GLP, where again, natural gas. We're also looking at different alternatives. We want to create another regasification plant in the Pacific front of our country. We do know, and we are coherent with what we have looked in terms of planning from the UTME unit. We're seeing how much we have in terms of reserves, but while we develop those reserves and that natural gas that we potentially have in our subsoil, we're looking for alternatives to have energy that is more reliable, faster, and cheaper for the country. What challenges does the country have? Obviously, we have seen that there has been expansion. If you look at the red bars, the number of users have grown tremendously. We're almost at 7 million users, but the growth rate for new users is decreasing because service expansion has left in some rural areas. How do we get to those places? Natural gas can be difficult in terms of infrastructure. However, substitutes such as GLP have been developed, and they're an interesting option for that coverage. If you consider this, we also have possible scenarios. Again, if we continue with the current production rates and current consumption rates, we're going to find that there's not going to be sufficient gas in future years. Also, the government is looking for solutions for those future problems. One of the main challenges that we have to be able to strengthen this energy matrix is to have competitive and fair fees, and this depends on the availability of the energetics for contract negotiation. What are our projections? In the case of natural gas supply, we have the need to secure flexible procurement. In this case, this refers to import. We need to also work with the international market, and once we have this regasification plant for users in Cartagena, this is going to happen at the end of the year, beginning of next year, and we're also building a new one in the Pacific area of the country. In terms of GLP, we have a tremendous potential for extracting butanes and propanes. We also want to increase the available supply, and we want to work on profitable drying projects. In terms of investment cost, GLP price, cost of transportation to the market, and all the alternative costs that we have mentioned for the use of this energetic. What are the pending topics? Reliability, for instance, we have challenges in terms of gas energy. We need an integral framework of reliability. We need reliability of lower cost. We need to secure supply for new plants, not only. Also, real availability of GLP as an alternative fuel to make that a reality and to have easy procurement. In terms of transportation, obviously, we need methodologies to give incentives. We need to provide incentives for new capacity investments. Also, all the oil pipelines need to be improved in terms of distribution. We need to secure the storage of the product in areas near to consumption. We need to precise criteria, develop criteria, competition criteria between natural gas and GLP. As a matter of fact, we have a commission that is actually working on this, and they have a deadline that is coming up in a month. And we also have institutional challenges such as the consolidation or having regulation that is efficient, regulation for non-conventional hydrocarbons. We're currently working on that too. We're analyzing all the impacts, environmental and economic. And we also have a topic of competition. We do know that this natural gas market has tremendous potential, but receiving or not receiving investment is closely related to our regulation. So now we're going to speak about the National Development Plan. 3 pillars: peace, equity, and education. The energy sector is focused in the first 3 axes of analysis, which is economic growth, reducing poverty, and working on competitivity for the country. And the guidelines for this national plan. For this presentation, I would like to speak about 3 things specifically: to expand and consolidate the market for combustible gas, on one side, supply, and to guarantee the quality of liquid and biofuels. In terms of electric energy, our country has focused or has tried to expand 3 fronts that are related to my presentation. On one side, one objective is to continue with expanding coverage and improving service. The idea here is to reach not connected areas, and again, we want to be able to provide energy 24 hours to the heads of the different municipalities. We have not been able to reach all the areas because in certain areas we have conflicts. Promoting different generation plans for hybrid systems. As you do know, Colombia currently has a matrix that depends on the hydrothermal equilibrium, 67-68% hydric generation, and we have capacity for thermal generation, but because of climate changes, the threat of possible impact has increased. The phenomenon of the Niño, phenomenon of La Niña has made that self-sufficiency being affected. So in terms of a government strategy, we're looking at the development of non-conventional sources. We do have a regulation, a law, that looks at supporting, at giving financing for those projects. And we're also looking at different topics of expansion and coverage to reach different areas. On the other side, as previously mentioned, the country is concentrated and strengthening something that it had never done before. We're working on clean energy. Implementation of this energy efficiency, and also to implement a strategy, an alliance, public-private alliance that can give Colombia a route map better than what we have had so far. In terms of generation, this is a topic that does not deal only with cheap or not cheap fuels. We are thinking to begin to substitute liquid fuels, looking at the different costs, and we're also looking at creating a fund, FENOGE, a fund for non-conventional energies. So we have a serious financial muscle here. So those ideas that are being developed, those prototypes, become a reality, and so they can impact the areas where they are really needed. What we really want is part of those guidelines, policy guidelines. We do know that approximately 81% covers in areas that are not connected. All this area of the country which is not interconnected, they have many institutional challenges. We're not thinking only about coverage of those areas, but coverage with quality. On one side, we have plans. We're increasing funds to increase coverage. Again, be able to reach those users that do not have this. Also, to continue with guidelines from the OCDE. And we're looking at promoting the massification of competitive energy sources. This doesn't mean that we are restricting use. We're very strong in terms of generation, hydrogeneration, and we're also promoting different regasification and other plans. But we do know that this is a step that Colombia has to take in terms of sustainable and clean generation. And we're also thinking about strategies, hybrid systems, and non-conventional sources. And again, we speak about the whole regulation, covering self-regulation, cogeneration, currently Ministry and Craig are working on this, and they should come out by May of this year. In terms of combustible gas, we have a plan for expanding, a 10-year plan. We're looking at the guidelines, we're looking at a roadmap. We're also looking for alternative generations for the use of GLP, self-gas, electric generation, or replacement of wood stoves. This again also important, and improvement of the distribution systems. The country frequently has a procurement risk because we cannot reach certain places in our country. So again, we're looking at improving the distribution system. For the topic of liquid fuels and biocombustibles, biofuels, is covering in general terms the following: diversification of the energetic basket. In other words, we're trying to promote competition between different types of fuel, GMB, auto, gas, energy, electric energy. You do know that our prices in Colombia, fuel prices, ACPM prices, are not reduced in parallel with the oil. In terms of expansion, in terms of supply, we're looking at expanding this system. We're looking at modernizing our refineries, and we're looking at strengthening the control of contraband of fuels. And in terms of prices, we're looking at revising policies of prices for fossil fuels. The government is looking at keeping the FEPC. We're looking at the quality of fuels and biofuels. Again, the idea is to keep the quality. This is sort of like the roadmap that we have in the National Planning Department. Our country is concerned about energy efficiency, about the quality of the energy, about the coverage that we're given. These are concerns for our country, for our government, and we have found support from the academia and from international experts that have given us many pillars. So this is again our roadmap for the next 4 years. Thank you very much.
Andrés Forero. So we will be proceeding now with the Q&A session with the open discussion. Yes, please, the audience. Jim.
This is a question for Jean-Michel. Your presentation was fascinating to me because I was completely unaware of the many different steps taken at different times by the European Union to try to unify energy policy and energy market. And I understood your conclusion to be those steps are still too weak, too fractured to overcome the individual national policies and to actually create that market. So my question is, the infrastructure is fairly unified. The grid, the pipelines do cross national borders and operate as a single system, do they not?
Yeah, but the fact that national systems are interconnected doesn't tell us if they can collectively act as a single market. So implementing any trade, having an interest for traders.
So do you think that market forces operating on that common infrastructure will push toward a unified market and therefore pull unified policies? Or do you think that the individual national policies will continue to be a barrier to a unified European policy over time?
This question is very difficult to answer. If I stick only to power, till recently, the European industry for power was entirely in favor of an open, no-border internal market from London to Warsaw or from Stockholm to Lisbon. Today it is less clear because they ask for capacity mechanisms which are mechanisms of entry into generation. And till today, we do not know how to Europeanize them and how to make them fully competition or market-based. So I cannot answer the second part of the question.
I've got a question to Raúl, Raúl, when presenting the vision of energy policy in Colombia, you make no reference to coal, but I know Colombia has a lot of coal reserves. This is question number one. And also renewables. I mean, you mentioned there's a huge hydro capacity, but all these not interconnected regions, what is the renewable vision of the Colombian energy policy?
Ahí, Gurkan, lo que nosotros hemos encontrado y pues
There, what we have found, Gurkan, with the studies that the bioenergetic planning unit has, we do understand, or we do know that Colombia has a potential in terms of coal that is very strong. This potential can be promoted broadly in our development plan. We have looked at that potential, and we're looking at the surplus that we can have to potentialize exports. One of the guidelines that we have, again, is not only strengthening generation and diversifying, we also want to use our resources better. With the topic of coal, yes, there is a guideline in the plan. We do know that we have this potential, and we will give incentives to be able to expand it. What do we see in terms of coal? Obviously, in this generation matrix, although that potential is tremendously big, it has not been developed by our country and can be expanded. How can it be expanded? There are a lot of forecasting exercises. We're looking at potential projects to exploit those resources and also to have thermal generation based on coal. We have not gone into the details. We believe that the country wants to keep its generation matrix with hydro, thermal gas, promote renewables. However, we do know that there are many technologies that can compete. Coal generation, which has been deemed as not very clean production, it is there. We do know the potential. We do know that it can be potentialized, but currently we're not working on that generation. This is sort of like put aside, and we're promoting other types of sources that we believe the country should gamble on in terms of sustainability. That is our policy work.
Other questions from the audience? Yes, please.
Sí, una pregunta.
Yes, this is a question specifically about the situation of Colombia. High cost of energy for users, especially for the industrial sector. This is a topic related to institutions. Yes, there is a commission for regulating prices and so on. I am concerned about the following. Although there is a framework for energy reliability, a good framework based on auctions, that perhaps has values that are very high in terms of the fees that are paid to the generators for reliability. And this also very high prices, more than 400 pesos, approximately 20 cents of a dollar. Again, that is the price for the exercise. Does the ministry have any plans to revise this, or is this part of the Commission for Regulating Energy? Again, those are the reasons for the high cost. Sergio, what we have seen so far from the government, yes, we are concerned. We have identified that it is not simply having expensive generation in the country. No, that's not it. When we transfer the fee to the final users, yes, it does deal with cost. This exercise that we have conducted, trying to determine all the cost, and that fee is something that is definitely added. The country, fortunately, has not had to use that over cost, but that is something that we want to revise. If we revise the plan, there's a discussion between the different ministries looking for the alternative. To respond to your question, yes, we will revise those issues that you mentioned. We want to have a large-scale exercise with consultants, with internal analysis. We want to revise all the internal perspectives to revise if this coverage method we have is enough, if this overcharge, how much it has cost the country to have that potential, what has been the trade-off, and we also want to propose a scenario in case there are any problems, to give solutions, to change that fee, to begin looking at different alternatives, to use different tools, perhaps auctions based on technology, to diversify, to perhaps not include that charge when we look at the competitiveness of the fee. It depends to the Ministry of Mines and Energy, and it depends to the regulation, to the correct. They have to change the regulation. But at least we are now working on the diagnosis to see what is happening with that diagnosis charge that we pay. And if we determine that indeed it is not working the way it should work now, we would determine that and we would make the necessary changes.
From the audience, one question over there.
Buenos días, mi nombre es Stefan Peter.
Good morning, my name is Stephen Peters. I'm from Austria, industrial technology. Today in the morning, I've been listening to terms that I heard from China 6 months ago in the IAEE, where I'm speaking about the efficiency of coal. I believe that all debates about energy, all these discussions about energy, they do not include this key issue. The key issue is coal efficiency, the efficiency of all the systems. Many things that Mr. Plummer mentioned are relegated to the efficiency of coal efficiency in first place. El dióxido de carbono, el carbón en general, es parte de la vida. Cuando uno aumenta la concentración ambiental del dióxido de carbono que uno tiene, ocurren efectos positivos y negativos. Algunas de las cosas positivas que ocurren es un aumento en la fotosíntesis de diferentes cosechas y en los bosques también. Los bosques son como un elemento que limpia nuestro ecosistema. Los daños que podemos hacer al incrementar las concentraciones de dióxido de carbono no son daños a la salud. El dióxido de carbono no afecta la salud, es un gas que no tiene color, que no tiene olor. ¿Cuáles son los daños? Los daños son los diferentes elementos del cambio climático que muchas personas están tratando de medir. El incremento de las mareas. Las mareas se incrementaron 8 pulgadas durante el siglo XX y muchas personas creen que con los aumentos de la concentración del dióxido de carbono van a aumentar entre 15 y 25 pulgadas este siglo. Eso es preocupante, pero yo no soy un experto en clima, así que no sé. Bueno, entonces tenemos mareas que aumentan. Tenemos tormentas mayor frecuencia en tormentas. Tenemos literatura en ambas direcciones, en favor y en contra.
Confidence in are basically only two. One, the DICE model that was produced first by Professor William Nordhaus of Yale University, in which he tried to measure these things and balance them out. Yale has a good school of forestry, and he had a lot of help from a lot of people writing dissertations. 4 years ago, I was trying to go through his model and ask him very detailed questions. And he admitted that in some ways his model was more of a mathematical abstraction than something into which it was easy to put empirical data, new data. And I said, well, who out there is doing more empirically oriented modeling of this subject? In his terse style, his email came back, Richard Toll. I emailed back to him, I said, who else? His email back to me, mainly Toll. So.
Jim, we're running out of time, so if you could...
Okay, have I addressed your question at all? It's not an easy area measuring the social cost of carbon. I can tell you that I don't have confidence in the Page model that was thrown into the pot by OMB and EPA, and part of that is that the author refuses to make the documentation available so that people can look at it and criticize it. But there's no doubt at all that it's very difficult to get numbers. Either Nordhaus or Toll get numbers in the range of about 10 to 20, occasionally up to 25. Page, Christopher Hope, gets numbers up in the 70s, 80s, 90s. So if you average his number in with the other two, that's where you get this 36. That's all we have. It's not very encouraging.
Thank you. Thank you.
By the way, there are 15 copies of my slides here and 15 over there if people are interested in getting a hard copy.
Of course, assumptions are very critical in those modeling studies. Me, myself being a modeler as well, I would like to elaborate on the assumptions maybe the next time. But now, before closing the session, I would like to ask each of the speakers for a final statement, final word. John Michel, having listened to all the presentations, could you just have a 1 minute final remark?
Yeah, my final statement has already been made at the end of the former session because I'm tweeting all the time. And I did tweet the following. I did love very much from Gerardo Abramovich. We have energy transition in US, or you will have in EU, in China, in Latin America. The only thing we know is that we have no established models that we can trust and follow. That's my conclusion of the session.
Gracias, Jean Michel. Creo que la hoja de ruta del país, a pesar de que es muy ambiciosa, va en la realidad en cuanto al tema que estamos enfrentando y que las dinámicas.
It's covering our reality. Our roadmap is covering our reality in terms of energy efficiency. In Colombia, despite having an abundance in terms of resources, coal, hydro energy, we also lack many environmental issues. I believe we're taking a very risky decision, but it's a very firm decision. We're thinking about sustainability, thinking about efficiency, and we're going beyond that. I believe this exercise is bringing IAEE here and all these types of alternatives alternatives to speak about these topics, to see what we can develop in terms of technical topics from an academia and market perspective, are helping and are going to help Colombia a lot to have a stronger analysis for all these topics.
Agree. I mentioned before Professor Ross McKittrick at University of Gulf. Basically, every year he takes all the basic data, runs them further back in time, closer to today, and usually comes up with the conclusion that nothing is statistically significant, which merely reinforces what Jean-Michel said. We're sort of flying blind in this whole carbon dioxide, climate change field.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So we're closing the session here today. Thank you very much for the attention, and a final applause to all the speakers.